The political landscape in modern America has become a theater of stark contrasts where the rhetoric of class warfare often meets the undeniable reality of elite indulgence. When Speaker Mike Johnson stood his ground during the recent intellectual exchange at Georgetown University, he did more than just debate policy with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He pulled back the curtain on a profound disconnect that has come to define the modern progressive movement in Washington. The confrontation was not merely a clash of personalities, but a fundamental interrogation of how public servants align their private actions with their public mandates. For years, the American public has been lectured on the existential threat of climate change and the moral necessity of radical wealth redistribution. Yet, the very messengers of these mandates often operate within a stratosphere of privilege that remains inaccessible to the working-class citizens they claim to represent. This intersection of high-minded idealism and high-end lifestyle choices creates a friction that the Republican platform is uniquely positioned to address. The optics of a lawmaker championing the Green New Deal while navigating the Capitol in a high-priced Tesla are difficult to reconcile for many voters. While the electric vehicle is marketed as a symbol of environmental stewardship, its production cycle tells a much darker story of global exploitation. Conservative critics have long pointed out the irony of relying on battery technology that depends on mineral extraction in regions plagued by human rights abuses. By highlighting these inconsistencies, Speaker Johnson forced a long overdue conversation about the true cost of the progressive agenda. It is a cost often borne by the voiceless, while the architects of such policies enjoy the comforts of modern luxury. The discourse surrounding political integrity often centers on whether a leader is willing to live under the same constraints they wish to impose on others. In the case of Representative Ocasio-Cortez, the contrast between her populist firebrand persona and her elite social orbit has become a focal point for conservative scrutiny. Traveling in first-class cabins while advocating for the elimination of fossil fuel-reliant aviation presents a visual metaphor for the modern administrative state. It suggests a hierarchy where the ruling class is exempt from the austerity it prescribes for the general population. This is not a personal attack, but a necessary critique of the structural hypocrisy that undermines public trust in democratic institutions. When leaders fail to model the sacrifices they demand, the moral authority of their platform begins to crumble under its own weight. Transparency in financial dealings remains the bedrock of a functioning republic, especially concerning the allocation of campaign resources and personal affiliations. The scrutiny regarding campaign payments to domestic partners or family members is a standard that must be applied regardless of partisan affiliation. For the Republican base, these reports are not just political fodder but evidence of a broader pattern of self-enrichment within the halls of power. If a movement claims to be fighting for the marginalized, its financial ledger must be beyond reproach to avoid the appearance of grifting. The American taxpayer is increasingly weary of a political class that seems to grow wealthier as the national debt reaches unprecedented levels. This scrutiny serves as a vital check on the tendency of power to insulate itself from the economic realities of the constituents it serves. The debate at Georgetown served as a microcosm of the national struggle between traditional American values and the push for a centralized planned economy. Speaker Johnson represented the conservative conviction that true leadership is rooted in the principles of individual responsibility and fiscal discipline. He challenged the notion that one can be a champion of the proletariat, while simultaneously enjoying the spoils of the very system they seek to dismantle. This critique resonates deeply with a constituency that values authenticity over polished social media presence and performative activism. The pushback against progressive elitism is not about stifling dissent, but about demanding a standard of honesty that matches the gravity of our national challenges. As the political divide widens, the demand for leaders who practice what they preach will only become more urgent for the future of the nation. The expansion of the federal government under the guise of social justice has created a fertile ground for what many conservatives call the green elite. This segment of the political class advocates for massive shifts in energy production that often result in skyrocketing utility costs for the average American family. While Representative Ocasio-Cortez champions the total overhaul of the American energy sector, the practical implications of such mandates are rarely felt by those in the upper echelons of power. Speaker Johnson's critique at Georgetown highlighted a growing resentment among voters who feel that their livelihoods are being sacrificed on the altar of a radical environmentalist ideology. The irony remains that the very technologies pushed as clean alternatives often rely on global supply chains that are anything but ethical or sustainable. By forcing this reality into the public consciousness, the Republican leadership is attempting to ground the national conversation in economic reality rather than utopian fantasy. True economic populism requires a leader to share in the struggles of the people. Yet the modern progressive movement seems increasingly detached from the blue-collar worker. When a politician advocates for a carbon tax while frequently utilizing private or premium travel, it sends a clear message of rules for thee, but not for me. This perceived hypocrisy is a primary driver of the political realignment we are seeing across the Rust Belt and other industrial heartlands. Working-class Americans understand that energy independence is not just a policy preference but a matter of national security and personal survival. They see the push for electric vehicle mandates as a direct assault on the traditional automotive industry that has sustained American families for generations. Speaker Johnson's line of questioning was a defense of these workers who are tired of being lectured by individuals who have never set foot on a factory floor. The ethical considerations regarding the manufacturing of green technology, often conveniently ignored by those who profit from the climate industrial complex. We must address the uncomfortable truth that child labor and environmental degradation in foreign nations are often the hidden costs of our clean energy transitions. If a political leader claims the moral high ground, they must be willing to account for the entire life cycle of the products they endorse and use. Challenging the narrative of the Tesla-driving revolutionary is essential because it exposes the limitations of a policy framework built on virtue signaling. For a conservative audience, the focus on these supply chain issues is not an opposition to innovation but a demand for genuine transparency and human rights. We cannot claim to be saving the planet while subsidizing the exploitation of the world's most vulnerable populations under the cover of progress. Furthermore, the redistribution of wealth through massive government spending programs has historically led to inflation that disproportionately harms the poor and middle class. The tax the rich slogan often serves as a smokescreen for policies that actually expand the power of the bureaucracy at the expense of the taxpayer. When leaders live in high-end apartments and move in exclusive circles, their calls for radical redistribution can feel more like an attempt to consolidate power than to help the needy. The Republican perspective emphasizes that true prosperity comes from a free market and a limited government that allows every individual the opportunity to thrive. By contrasting the speaker's traditional fiscal conservatism with the representative's socialist leanings, we see two very different visions for the American future. One relies on the ingenuity of the American spirit, while the other depends on the coercive power of the state to enforce equality of outcome. The integrity of our political system is also threatened when the line between personal gain and public service becomes blurred through complex financial arrangements. Skepticism regarding the flow of campaign funds to associates or family members is a necessary component of a healthy, skeptical electorate. Conservatives argue that if the progressive movement were truly about systemic change, it would start by reforming the way its own leaders manage their political wealth. The call for accountability is not a partisan weapon but a fundamental requirement for anyone seeking to hold the reins of power in a representative democracy. As the public becomes more aware of these financial intricacies, The demand for a more authentic and transparent leadership will only continue to grow. Speaker Johnson's interrogation serves as a blueprint for how to hold the powerful accountable by using their own words and actions as the primary evidence. The cultural divide in America is often exacerbated by a political class that views itself as morally superior to the citizens it purports to lead. This sense of elitism is palpable when lawmakers dismiss the concerns of ordinary people regarding the costs of living and the preservation of traditional values. For many in the Republican base, the defense of the American way of life requires standing up to those who wish to transform the country into something unrecognizable. The debate at Georgetown was a symbolic victory for those who believe that the foundations of our republic are worth protecting from radical encroachment. It showed that when confronted with logic and facts, the thin veneer of populist rhetoric often fails to hold up under serious scrutiny. This is the essence of the conservative mission: to provide a steady hand and a clear voice in a time of profound cultural and political upheaval. The American public deserves a leadership that does not treat policy as a tool for personal branding but as a sacred trust. When Speaker Johnson dismantled the arguments of the far left, he was speaking for millions who feel ignored by the mainstream media and the coastal elites. His emphasis on the practical consequences of legislation reminds us that every bill signed in Washington has a real-world impact on the kitchen tables of Middle America. We must continue to demand that those who seek to lead us are willing to live by the very standards they propose for the rest of society. The push for central planning in the energy sector is not just an economic mistake but a fundamental misunderstanding of the American character. Our nation was built on the idea that individuals, not bureaucrats, are best equipped to make decisions about their own lives and businesses. When the government picks winners and losers in the marketplace, it stifles the competition that drives progress and lowers costs for everyone. The Republican Party stands as the last line of defense against a movement that seeks to micromanage every aspect of the American economy. By exposing the contradictions in the progressive lifestyle, we are highlighting the fatal flaws in their overarching philosophy of government control. History has shown that when the ruling class becomes insulated from the effects of its own policies, the seeds of decline are sown. We see this in cities where radical district attorneys refuse to prosecute crimes, while those in power live behind gates with private security. We see it in an education system that prioritizes indoctrination over excellence, while the elites send their children to exclusive private institutions. The struggle for the soul of America is being fought in these moments of confrontation where the truth is spoken to power without apology. Speaker Johnson's resolve at Georgetown is a testament to the fact that the conservative movement will not be silenced or intimidated by the roar of the mob. As we look toward the future, the importance of maintaining a vigilant and informed citizenry cannot be overstated. We must look past the flashy graphics and carefully curated social media feeds to see the underlying substance of our political leaders. If the rhetoric of a politician does not match the reality of their life, we must have the courage to ask why and demand better. The Republican vision offers a path toward a more honest and prosperous nation where the government serves the people, not the other way around. Every debate and every disagreement is an opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the principles of liberty and justice for all. In conclusion, for this stage of our analysis, the clash between the Speaker and the Representative is more than just a news cycle event. It is a defining moment that captures the essence of the choice facing the American voter in the coming years. Do we choose a path of government-mandated austerity led by an elite class that exempts itself from the rules? Or do we choose a path of freedom, responsibility, and the unwavering belief that every American has the right to pursue their own version of the American dream? The answers we provide to these questions will determine the legacy we leave for the generations of Americans yet to come. The erosion of public trust is perhaps the most significant casualty of the modern political era where rhetoric and reality are constantly at odds. When a leader demands that the citizenry embrace a lower standard of living for the sake of the collective, any deviation from that standard in their own life becomes a glaring indictment of their sincerity. Conservative thought has long held that the moral authority of a governor is derived from their willingness to be bound by the same laws as the governed. In the hallowed halls of Georgetown, Speaker Johnson was not just debating a colleague but was defending the very principle of egalitarian justice. He recognized that for the American experiment to succeed, the people must believe that their leaders are not a separate caste but fellow citizens with skin in the game. The defense of the working class cannot be a mere campaign slogan used to secure votes in a swing district before retreating to the comforts of an urban elite lifestyle. For many Americans, the sight of a politician who rails against the wealthy while simultaneously enjoying the exclusive perks of the political establishment is deeply alienating. This disconnect fuels the populist fire that has reshaped the Republican Party into a champion for those who feel forgotten by the coastal power brokers. We must understand that political integrity is not just about following the letter of the law, but about honoring the spirit of the social contract. When that contract is broken by the perceived hypocrisy of the ruling class, the stability of our democratic institutions is placed in immediate and severe jeopardy. The focus on the representative's use of high-end travel and luxury goods is often dismissed by her supporters as a distraction, yet it remains central to the question of policy feasibility. If the champions of the Green New Deal cannot find a way to navigate their own lives without the conveniences of modern industrial capitalism, how can they expect the rest of the nation to do so? This practical contradiction suggests that the proposed mandates are not intended for everyone but are designed to be enforced on those without the means to bypass them. The Republican mission is to expose these double standards to ensure that legislation is grounded in what is actually possible for the average citizen. By insisting on a reality-based approach to governance, we protect the public from the unintended consequences of radical and unproven social engineering projects. Furthermore, the scrutiny of financial transparency within political campaigns is an essential function of a free and vigilant press. When reports surface concerning payments to inner circles or lifestyle choices that seem at odds with a populist persona, it is the duty of opposition leaders to demand clarity. Speaker Johnson's insistence on these facts was a call for a higher standard of ethics that transcends partisan bickering and touches the core of public service. The American people deserve to know if their representatives are truly working for them or if they are merely building a personal brand to be monetised later. Accountability is the only antidote to the corruption that naturally gravitates toward large, centralized governments with little oversight or meaningful competition. The debate over the production of electric vehicles and the ethics of the global supply chain is a prime example of the complexity that progressive slogans often ignore. It is easy to advocate for a fossil fuel-free future when one does not have to answer for the human cost of mining rare earth minerals in unstable regions. Conservatives argue that true environmentalism must take into account the totality of human impact, including the protection of labor rights and the prevention of child exploitation. By bringing these issues to the forefront, the speaker forced a more nuanced and honest discussion about what it means to be a responsible global citizen. We cannot allow our desire for environmental virtue to blind us to the harsh realities of international commerce and the suffering of those who make our clean lifestyle possible. The cultural impact of these political confrontations cannot be understated as they shape the worldviews of the next generation of American leaders. Students at Georgetown and viewers across the nation witnessed a masterclass in how to challenge a dominant narrative through the use of logic and documented evidence. It was a reminder that the truth is not a matter of consensus or social media popularity, but is found in the consistency of one's arguments and actions. For the conservative movement, this is a call to remain steadfast in the face of a media landscape that often favors style over substance. We must continue to equip our citizens with the tools to think critically and to look beneath the surface of polished political performances. As we analyze the fallout from such high-profile exchanges, we see a pattern of the progressive left retreating into ideological bubbles when faced with uncomfortable questions. Instead of engaging with the substance of the critique regarding her lifestyle, the representative and her allies often frame such inquiries as personal attacks or attempts at intimidation. This refusal to engage in honest self-reflection is a sign of a movement that has become too insulated from the very people it claims to serve. The Republican response is to double down on the facts and to keep the focus on the policy outcomes that matter most to American families. We will not be distracted by the theater of grievance when there are real problems that require practical and principled solutions. The strength of the American economy has always been its ability to adapt and innovate without the heavy hand of government mandates. When we allow politicians to dictate which technologies we must use and how we must live, we stifle the very creativity that made us a global leader. The push for a centralized energy policy is a direct threat to the decentralized and diverse economy that has provided prosperity for millions. Speaker Johnson's defense of the free market is a defense of the American dream itself, where success is earned through hard work and innovation rather than government subsidies. We believe that the best way to protect our environment and our economy is to empower individuals to make choices that are right for their families and their communities. The role of the leader in a republic is to act as a steward of the people's trust and a guardian of their liberties. This stewardship requires a level of personal humility and a commitment to the truth that seems increasingly rare in the halls of Congress. When we see a leader who is willing to stand up and speak the truth, even when it is unpopular, we see a glimpse of what our political system can and should be. The confrontation at Georgetown was a moment of clarity that cut through the noise of the 24-hour news cycle to reveal the heart of the American struggle. It is a struggle between those who believe in the power of the state and those who believe in the power of the individual. In the coming years, the debate over the soul of America will only intensify as the stakes become higher and the divisions deeper. We must be prepared to defend our values with the same passion and intellectual rigor that we saw on display during that pivotal debate. The Republican vision is one of hope, grounded in the timeless principles of liberty, responsibility, and the rule of law. We invite all Americans to join us in this mission to restore integrity to our government and to ensure that the light of freedom continues to shine brightly for all the world to see. Our commitment to these principles is unwavering, and our resolve to hold the powerful accountable is stronger than ever. As we conclude this portion of our analysis, it is clear that the path forward requires a renewed focus on the basics of good governance and personal character. We cannot expect to solve our nation's complex problems if we are led by individuals who are more interested in their own celebrity than in the hard work of legislating. The call for consistency and integrity is not a partisan demand, but a universal one that reflects the highest aspirations of the American people. We will continue to shine a light on the contradictions of the elite and to provide a voice for those who believe that our best days are still ahead of us. Through vigilance and action, we can build a future that is worthy of the sacrifices of those who came before us. The tension between individual liberty and state-mandated collectivism has reached a breaking point in the contemporary American political discourse. At the heart of the Republican critique lies the belief that the government should never become an instrument for social engineering at the expense of personal freedom. When Speaker Johnson challenged the narrative of progressivism at Georgetown, he was standing as a bulwark against the encroachment of a centralized authority that seeks to dictate the minutiae of daily life. The push for radical environmental policies often serves as a Trojan horse for a much broader expansion of the administrative state's power over the private sector. By questioning the lifestyle of those who advocate for these changes, conservatives are pointing out that the architects of such plans often envision a world where they are the managers and the public is the managed. This bureaucratic overreach is frequently justified by an appeal to the common good, yet it rarely delivers the promised results for the very people it claims to protect. We see this in the rising costs of energy and housing, which are direct results of restrictive regulations that favor elite interests over market efficiency. The Republican vision promotes a return to the principles of federalism and local control, where communities have the power to decide their own destinies without interference from Washington. When a politician uses their platform to push for national mandates while leading a life of exceptional privilege, it underscores the inherent unfairness of the top-down approach. We must resist the temptation to trade our individual agency for the false security of a government-managed economy that history has proven to be inefficient and prone to corruption. The role of media in shaping the public's perception of political integrity cannot be overlooked in this era of instant information and viral content. Many mainstream outlets tend to overlook the inconsistencies of progressive icons while magnifying every perceived flaw of their conservative counterparts. This double standard makes the work of leaders like Speaker Johnson even more critical in providing a necessary counter-narrative to the prevailing cultural orthodoxy. By using direct confrontation based on public records and financial data, the Republican leadership is bypassing the traditional gatekeepers to reach the American people with the unvarnished truth. We believe that an informed citizenry is the best defense against the manipulation of public opinion by those with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. Furthermore, the focus on the domestic battery supply chain and its reliance on foreign adversaries is a matter of profound national security that transcends environmental concerns. It is dangerously naive to advocate for a complete transition to electric vehicles, while the primary materials for those vehicles are controlled by regimes that do not share our values. Conservatives argue that true sustainability must include the security of our energy sources and the protection of American sovereignty from foreign influence. By highlighting the involvement of child labor and environmental neglect in overseas mining, we are calling for a more ethical and realistic approach to technological advancement. We cannot afford to outsource our industrial capacity to nations that use that very economic power to undermine our interests and our way of life. The use of social media as a tool for political branding has created a new class of celebrity politicians who prioritize engagement metrics over substantive legislative accomplishments. This shift toward performative politics is particularly evident among those who use populist rhetoric to build a massive following, while living a life that contradicts their stated values. Speaker Johnson's critique serves as a reminder that the true measure of a leader is found in the bills they pass and the lives they improve, not in the number of likes or retweets they receive. For the conservative movement, the goal is to return to a more serious and dignified form of public service that values substance and results above all else. We must demand that our elected officials spend more time in committee rooms and less time in front of cameras chasing the next viral moment. The integrity of our electoral process is also tied to the financial transparency of those who seek to represent us in the halls of power. When campaign funds are used in ways that raise ethical questions, it is the responsibility of every citizen to demand a full and honest accounting of those expenditures. The Republican platform emphasizes the need for strict adherence to ethical guidelines to ensure that political office is never used for personal enrichment or the benefit of one's inner circle. By holding the representative accountable for her financial decisions, we are sending a message that no one is above the law or the scrutiny of the public. This commitment to transparency is essential for restoring the faith of the American people in their government and the democratic process. The debate over the future of the American energy sector is ultimately a debate over the kind of country we want to leave for our children and grandchildren. Do we want a nation that is dependent on foreign powers and burdened by government mandates that stifle innovation and increase the cost of living? Or do we want a nation that is energy independent, technologically advanced, and committed to the principles of a free and open market? The Republican answer is clear. We choose the path of freedom, innovation, and the responsible use of our abundant natural resources to fuel a new era of American prosperity. We believe that by unleashing the creativity of the private sector, we can solve our environmental challenges without sacrificing our economic strength or our personal liberties. As we move toward the final stages of this national conversation, we must remain vigilant against the forces that seek to divide us based on class, race, or political affiliation. The strength of America has always been our ability to come together around a shared set of values and a common commitment to the pursuit of happiness. When politicians use grievance and envy to build their power base, they are tearing at the very fabric of our society and undermining the foundations of our republic. The Republican mission is to provide a unifying vision that celebrates the potential of every individual and the greatness of the American spirit. We believe that by focusing on what unites us, we can overcome any obstacle and build a future that is brighter for all Americans. The challenge of leadership in the 21st century requires a unique blend of intellectual courage, moral clarity, and a deep-seated respect for the wisdom of the American people. We saw these qualities on display during the confrontation at Georgetown, where the speaker stood up for the principles of consistency and integrity. It was a moment that resonated with millions of Americans who are tired of the double standards and the empty promises of the political elite. We will continue to champion these values and to fight for a government that is as honest, hardworking, and resilient as the people it serves. Our journey is far from over, but we are more committed than ever to the cause of liberty and the restoration of the American dream. The lessons of history are clear. The most successful societies are those that empower their citizens and limit the reach of their governments. We must not forget these lessons in our haste to solve the problems of the present through the failed policies of the past. The Republican vision is rooted in the timeless truths that have guided our nation since its founding, and we are confident that these truths will lead us to a better future. By demanding excellence and integrity from our leaders, we are ensuring that the American experiment continues to thrive for generations to come. We thank you for joining us in this important discussion, and we look forward to the work that lies ahead in the service of our great nation. The final resolution of the American political struggle will not be decided by who has the loudest voice on social media, but by who holds the most steadfast commitment to the truth. As we reflect on the exchange between Speaker Johnson and Representative Ocasio-Cortez, we see a profound metaphor for the choice facing the entire nation. It is a choice between a celebrity-driven politics of appearance and a principle-driven politics of substance that demands actual results for the American people. The Republican movement is dedicated to the idea that a leader's private life must be the ultimate testament to the public policies they champion in the halls of power. If we are to move forward as a united people, we must reject the cynicism that allows for such glaring contradictions between elite lifestyle and populist rhetoric. The path to national renewal requires a return to the foundational virtues of honesty, frugality, and a genuine respect for the taxpayers' hard-earned money. We cannot afford a political class that treats the national treasury as a personal piggy bank or as a laboratory for unproven social experiments. True leadership involves the courage to tell the public the truth about the costs of transition and the necessity of maintaining our economic competitive edge. By holding the powerful accountable for their financial decisions and their policy failures, we are performing a vital service to the future of our republic. The conservative vision offers a clear and compelling alternative to the managed decline and the moral confusion that have characterized the radical left's recent agenda. Education and civic engagement are the primary tools through which we will reclaim the narrative and restore balance to our political system. We must ensure that the next generation of Americans understands the importance of critical thinking and the value of looking beyond the surface of polished political marketing. The confrontation at Georgetown serves as a teaching moment for every young citizen who values integrity over ideology and facts over feelings. We encourage all voters to demand more from their representatives than just catchy slogans and performative activism on the floor of the House. Our government functions best when it is held to a high standard of accountability by a vigilant and informed electorate that refuses to be distracted. The future of American energy and independence will be built on the strength of our ingenuity and the resilience of our free market system. We will continue to advocate for a diverse energy portfolio that prioritizes the security of our nation and the affordability of life for our families. By rejecting the top-down mandates of the green elite, we are protecting the rights of individuals to choose the products and technologies that best serve their needs. The Republican Party stands as the champion of the worker, the entrepreneur, and the family who simply want to live their lives in peace and prosperity. Our commitment to these principles is the bedrock upon which we will build a stronger, more self-reliant, and more prosperous America for all. As the curtain falls on this particular chapter of political theater, the underlying issues of integrity and consistency remain as urgent as ever. We must never stop asking the difficult questions and demanding that those who seek our trust are willing to earn it through their actions. The struggle for the soul of our nation is a marathon, not a sprint, and it requires the persistent effort of every patriot who believes in the American dream. We are confident that the truth will ultimately prevail and that the principles of liberty and justice will continue to guide our way. Thank you for your commitment to this discourse and for your unwavering belief in the exceptional promise of the United States of America.